Welcome to Your Iconic Image. If you want to take control of your image and be a power player in your space, then this is the show for you. Here we will arm you with tools and information to help you grow your brand on purpose. I'm your host, Marlena Semenza, photographer and visual strategist. Now let's dive into today's episode. Founder and CEO of Grace Communications, Emily Zimmermann has over 15 years of experience leading marketing, public relations, and business development efforts for companies all over the United States. Her It's a Match workshops use the same fundamentals that are successful in dating to help businesses grow. Welcome, Emily.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me on.
So I'm really intrigued by this, handling business like dating. So first, tell us what you see some of the similarities as being.
Yeah, so I think there are unlimited similarities, honestly. This all came about because it was a way that I would kind of cope with the hardships of being an entrepreneur. It was how I would laugh about things. And I would find myself thinking like, this is like when I used to be dating. Like this reminds me of how I felt before I got married. And there were a lot of ups and downs, a lot of awkward situations, a lot of just, are you a good fit? Are you not a good fit? Are you a match? Are you not a match? So it was kind of one of those things where it was like a coping mechanism for me to change my mindset and look at it almost like a game or like something fun when things would happen that were uncomfortable as a business owner. But some of the similarities, I think right off the bat that most people are going to be like, yeah, I can relate to that. Our rejection is a big one. So as, a female entrepreneur, or even just entrepreneur in general, you don't have to even put gender in there. Rejection is just a constant, you just have to be prepared for that. And I always feel like that, if you can change your mindset on how you handle rejection, you can do almost anything because there's that fear of being rejected that so many people have. And it's the same in the dating realm. You feel like one of the things that holds people back, I think, from putting themselves out there and finding the one or whatever is rejection. And it's so easy to take it personally and to feel like, I'm just never going to find that right match. I'm never going to have a boyfriend. I'm never going to get married, or I'm never going to find that the clients that I want. It's so similar. But I think for me, I still allow myself to be sad if I get rejected, because I think that you're not a robot. So you need to be able to let the feelings out. So I have this rule where I can have a day where I can cry, I could be depressed, I can just let it all out for one day. And then I have to just figure out how to grow from that. And I think it's the same with dating, when you feel like you're all of a sudden rejected. And if it's kind of one-sided, especially, it can feel just like this huge blow to your ego and to your identity. So I think it's important to change that mindset and be like, yes, I'm sad about it, but what can I learn from this? How can I grow? And what is this opening up for me?
Because two things came to mind as you were saying that. The first one was just like, in both cases, you don't want to be all things to all people. And there are people that you just like you don't want to be married to, you don't want to be in a business relationship with either. And the other thing too is this is what I found is when a client eliminates themselves, that's actually not a bad thing.
Correct.
Just like when a dating prospect eliminates themselves, you could have dodged a real bullet.
Oh yeah, definitely have. I'm sure you have as well. And I think that's the healthier way of looking at it. It's not what you lost, it's what's opened up for you now. So I know for me in March of this year, I had, a very difficult season in my business life where I had one of my long-term clients. They just very, very suddenly decided not to work with my agency anymore. And you feel rejected. You're like, I've, all the weekends, all the nights, all the things you've given up to make that relationship work. The same way you feel if you're in a long-term relationship and all of a sudden they break up with you like via text or something. You're like, all that time, like it meant nothing. But it's not, that's not the reality of it. The reality of it is for some reason you're not aligned with them anymore. It's not working for them or it's not working for you. So it's time to break up. And you have to accept that and then think about all the things that are positive about it. And for me with that client, it was sad because I was like, oh, I'm going to miss, some of these things. But then I was like, I don't have to be on call on weekends anymore. Like I don't have to do this. I can now, I have 20 extra more hours that I can get, all these other, so you got to think about like all the wins of the breakup. And I think that's the same with dating too. And I wish that I had more of that kind of mindset when I was dating, because I think I would have bounced back a lot quicker. When I in that season of life.
So, but what about, okay, so we have the rejection piece of it, but what about the people that, let's say, are just bad daters in general? How do you go from being a bad business dater to a good business dater?
I think you have to be painfully self-aware, because I think a lot of the similarities between being good at dating or being good at business dating is about knowing yourself enough to know what works for you in relationships. So like you said, you're not going to be the right fit for everybody. Not everyone's a match for you. But if you know maybe what triggers you, you know what I mean? Like there might be some personalities that are triggers. I know I've discovered that, and I can tell pretty much from immediately meeting someone, I'm like, this isn't going to work. We're not going to have good chemistry. We're not going to align together. So knowing that is helpful, but then also knowing what is good for you, like what is a complementary relationship or personality for you. And once you know that, I think you can master almost any connection, because you'll know when to walk away and you'll know when to move forward more. So I think it's more about that self-awareness. It's not about really everybody else. It's more about you.
So is it knowing kind of, what our absolute yeses and absolute nos are?
I think so. I mean, one of the things that we do sometimes with the It's a Match workshops is we talk about like love languages and kind of personality tests, that sort of thing. And it's funny because you can take the whole love language thing and that can be translated into business too.
Do a little of that for us. Do a little of that.
Yeah. So, what do you know what your love language?
Not a clue.
One of yours, what one of yours is? Yeah. So I'm really into spending like time with people. So quality time, that's huge for me. So when you know that, it's something that, you can use to strengthen relationships. So once someone knows that about me, they're like, okay, well then one-on-one time would be really important, right? Like not being on your phone, while we're in the middle of a meeting, or giving me that quality time. And that's how I connect with people. The same thing if I was trying to connect with a potential client. And I mean, I don't know how we'd get that personal before we even worked together, but let's just say we somehow discover that about each other. I think that's where you would know, okay, I'm gonna go that extra step and make sure I'm giving them that really personal kind of connection. If they're somebody that maybe likes gifts, like that's another one. And that doesn't mean you're materialistic. Maybe you just really enjoy giving and receiving gifts. That's a really easily translatable in the business realm, because you can kind of personalize that. Don't just give them the Grace Communications logo pin, unless they're a writer, then maybe that would make sense with like a journal. But figuring out what makes them tick and how you can kind of go above and beyond to personalize it. So I think that's that's the gist of all of that. When we talk about personality tests or love languages or any of that, I think it's going beyond just the surface, and it's trying to connect with people on a level that you're not just a blurry face in the crowd. So I think that's a huge problem with a lot of the dating and a lot of the business dating in our day and age, honestly.
It's interesting to me because part of my brain kicked into there must be certain ways, let's say when you take on a client, to be able to, without asking them what are your love languages, to find out things like how they want to be communicated to, or various things that you can put into place, I would think, so you know how to better handle the relationship.
Yeah, I think that's where like onboarding and having kind of like certain routines in place before and after you sign with a client, whatever makes the most sense with your business model. But I think you having like certain discovery questions, and I know we do that, but like exactly one of them is, what's your preferred way of communicating? I think asking people what they don't like, which I hate to be negative, but it's interesting when you ask that, you can kind of figure out what they do like as well. And some people it's easier for them to tell what they don't like. But I think that's also showing, again, that personal touch. Like, we care about you. You're not just another number. You're not just another client. We really want to invest in your future. And it's the same with dating. When you think about people that have charm, so that's one of the topics we talk about is charm. And you think about that, and most people that have charm, you think it's like this undefinable thing. It's not necessarily. Most of the time, they make you feel like the only person in the world. They have that capacity, and you're just like, I am so amazing. You feel amazing after you talk to them. You can do that for people with paying attention to them and learning certain things about them and making it about them and not about you. That's the biggest thing. Even if you're faking it, just make them feel like the only person in the world.
And that's an interesting point too, because the about page that everybody has on their website.
Yeah.
And so many times people go on and on and on and on and on about them. But really, your about page isn't about you. Your business isn't about you. It's about how you can serve other people and what you can do for them and how you can make them shine and all those kinds of things. And I think it's kind of, if you're having a conversation with somebody, or if you're in a relationship with someone and all you do is talk about you, where's that going to go?
And especially if you're in a business where you're client serving, you can't, and that's a huge mistake. If you do make it all about you, it's kind of like, well, what are you going to do for me? Like, this isn't the Emily show. You know what I mean? Like, it needs to be about the client. So, but that's where I just see these huge parallels with dating, because I can think of several dates in the past where I didn't ever want to talk to that guy again, because it was just, he talked nonstop about himself. I don't even know if you knew my name, so it's like, you can't, nobody wants to be around somebody like that. It's just off-putting. And I think sometimes we can do that when we're nervous. So I don't think you're always like a jerk when you do that. I think sometimes it's just, you just come off wrong. And that's where like the first impression thing, we talk about that sometimes in It's a Match as well. They kind of go hand in hand with like charm and chemistry and some of that, because sometimes things can happen and you're off. You have an off day or an off moment, and you can make just a terrible first impression. And there was this study that said it takes like 8 positive encounters after 1 negative first impression to build trust. And I was like, I think it was from Harvard. Don't quote me on it. Maybe it's somewhere else. But I read that and I was like, oh my gosh, that's probably true. Because if you think about it and you meet someone and they do make a bad first impression, you just kind of like, it would take a lot to overcome that. So it makes it even more important that you do everything you can to make a great impression when you first meet people.
What are some tips that you can give us that will help us make a good first impression?
So some of it is kind of like, I think it's kind of like, well, duh, I should do that. But smiling, being like positive body language, don't be like closed off, doing some research on who you're meeting with so you know what they like, what they don't like. Don't be fake. Like, don't pretend like I'm a marathon runner just because they are. And then they're going to find out. They're going to know you're lying. So don't like make up a whole story, but try to find commonalities with that person so you can bond with them. That's truthful. I always say that because it's like, we've all been there too with people we've dated, not to go back to that, where you're like, so that was not true. They said that just so I would like them.
Right.
So smiling, figure out what kind of welcome, if there's certain culture barriers. So like, do you shake hands? Like that sort of thing. And also I think being on time, there's certain things like that, making sure you're on time, how you present yourself, not that it's a fashion show, but dress appropriately. If you're going to a very expensive, fancy restaurant, don't show up in your athleisure. On the same token, though, if you're doing like a hike or I don't know, something more informal, don't show up in a business suit,
Right.
So just try to make sure you're being appropriate for the situation. But I think the other thing with that, the biggest thing is the same thing as we talked about with charm. It's not just about you. You can make a great impression, and honestly, they may want to work with you and you barely even talked about yourself. I've had that happen where I'll get off the discovery call with a potential client. I'm like, I didn't even get to like sell myself at all. Like, I don't know if they're even going to want to work with me. And it's surprising how much it doesn't matter. Some of the things you think matter don't. It's more, you made it about them and they got what they needed from it.
Right.
So it's kind of figuring that out beforehand and not being fake, but also being a little strategic with how you present yourself.
Okay. So let's say they've decided they're going to enter into this relationship with us.
Yeah.
It also would make sense to me that because, when we first enter into a romantic relationship, our best foot is forward and,
yes,
we spend a lot of time putting in the effort to date them. And then as the relationship progresses, we put in a little less effort and a little less effort because it becomes familiar and routine. So what are your thoughts too on continuing to date your client, so to speak?
I think that's where relationship routines are important. So, just like you do like a date night or something with your significant other, having maybe like for what we do with our long-term clients that we're in long-term relationships with, we have set like weekly or monthly or bi-weekly meetings. We figure out what works best for them, but we make sure that we have that time set aside so that we can connect with them. If you can't meet in person, virtual, like doing a Zoom call, I think is still better than doing just a phone call at all times. But I do think there's something to be said with in person as well. Especially if there's someone who, it sounds weird, but like physical touch is one of the love languages, and it's physical touch. People are not just about hugs and stuff. It's the physical environment. So being in their physical environment might be really important to that person. And I'm sure some people who are really, really into like face-to-face stuff. It would be interesting. That might be one of their top love languages, where they don't feel connected unless they can see you. Like, even Zoom, it doesn't cut it for them in the long run. So figuring out how to make that space to connect, I think is really, really important, so that they're like, okay, I know we're going to talk at this time, every week, and making them feel. This is where I laugh so much, because when you own an agency, you have to make everyone feel like they're the only one you're dating.
Exactly.
You gotta make them feel like you're exclusive, but you're not exclusive. But make them feel like they matter, that they're special, because they do. They are special, and make sure you have that time set aside so that you can be present and you can give them your special undivided attention.
So how do you do that as you continue to grow a company?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think with that, it's knowing no one's ever going to be exactly like you are. So what I bring to the table, I can't clone that necessarily exactly. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. So that's where hiring people that complement you well, but also knowing their strengths and weaknesses. And I think matching them appropriately with certain clients is super important. Because I think at first, at least for me, when I grew and I started adding team members, I would try to have them be exactly like me. And that does not work. It just doesn't work. Because it's not possible. And that's that's not respecting them and what they bring to the table. But I think, having that good match with the clients and what their strengths are, and then also having certain kind of standard operating procedures or practices so that the client knows what to expect. Not like it's like fast food, but like knows a certain level of service. And you go to a McDonald's, you're always going to get no matter where you go, you should be able to get certain things. I think there are certain things like that. Like we have our core values, and knowing what those are and making sure every one of your team always does certain things is really important to have that consistency.
So now that we're in the relationship, what are some things that we can do to deepen the relationship as we go forward?
Oh, this is so fun. I don't know why I just get a kick out of everything about this topic. I think it's a lot like with dating, with business and dating. To deepen the relationship, you have to have shared experiences. I think you have to have shared goals. I think you build trust. And so it deepens as you build that trust with a client or with whoever you're dating. And I honestly think the only way you do that is it's time, but it's also coming through on what you promise. So I think that's the biggest thing, like with the client relationships that I've seen just grow and really like deepen. We've done these amazing projects together, or, started these events from scratch. You do these like really cool things and you do them above and beyond even what they expect. And you just bond. You naturally bond in that way, and they trust you. And I think that's the same when you think about your best relationships. You start to think about these shared experiences, and also how your friends had your back and they came through for you. And it's the same exact thing, I think, with clients.
Love all that. So tell us a little bit now about Grace Communications and what you do.
So we offer marketing support services. We do social media management, public relations, event planning, and business development. So those are kind of our key services. We offer it for clients all over the country. Our agency's based in Charlotte, but we can work pretty much from anywhere. And we're not specialized in any certain industry. A lot of people, I think they assume like you would be, but we work across a lot of industries. I would say if I had any sort of niche, it would be I love animals. So we do work with a lot of animal focused businesses. And all of our clients do have one thing in common. They all are very community oriented. So they all have that spirit of giving back. And we really look for that because it kind of goes hand in hand with our values.
And I know you said that you teamed recently with an image manager. So tell us about that.
Yeah. So Suzanne Libbrand, she is one of my agency's longest clients. And so we actually kind of branched out and partnered with her to put some total like branding makeover packages together. And these are really impactful for the leaders, the image facing business, entrepreneurs, if you're a reporter, anyone that's really image facing, and kind of combining her image management, which is like styling, personal shopping, putting lookbooks together. So you look good in person, online and pictures, and then combining that with what we do with the social media, public relations, all of that. So I like to think of it almost like the Hollywood dream team that you hear about behind the stars, but bringing that more to a local level for leaders that maybe don't have millions and millions of dollars, but still need to have that cohesive image across everything.
Mm. And, just to bring that back to the dating aspect, how important is your business image and what you are projecting?
It's very important. I think that it needs to be authentic. Again, which goes back to the whole dating thing. You don't want to present yourself in a way that's not who you really are. But I think you have to know who you are, and you have to be intentional, and you have to be authentic with that. So with business, I say intentional, knowing what do you want people to think of you as? Like, what emotions do you want to evoke with them? Who do you want to work with? And then think back, and how can you present yourself in a way that would attract that? And make sure, nobody's perfect. There's going to be times where maybe you don't completely nail it with that, but most of the time, you should be able to do that. So it's kind of fun because you really can be anything you want to be with your image. So it's just thinking about what that is and doing it.
And let me ask you this, because I know that you do social media management, things like that. What about, to liken it to dating again, if I want to be around people that, love dogs, I'm going to go to a dog park.
Right.
What about social media? How do we approach that is consistent with the company we want to build? Do we show up, is it showing up where our client or our potential client is, or is it kind of just spraying across all social media?
I personally, I don't think it should be just trying to hit everything, because there's only so much time that people have. And I think that there's so many options now of the different platforms too. And each one of them does kind of serve a little bit of a different purpose. So I think that's where knowing your audience and where you kind of want to land, I would suggest only focusing on a couple, and even go so boldly as to say maybe just one. Really, really put your time into it. You can still be on the other ones, just so you have a presence, but really hyper focusing on some of them. You can't be everything for everyone. Like you said, you can't. So I think that it's very important to not do that, and you have to identify that though through having a marketing plan. You got to know, what is your mission statement? What are your values? What are your main goals? And then dialing down from that, like, how are you going to reach that? And social media should be part of that. For example, if you're a very B2B focused business, LinkedIn's probably a really great option for you. I don't know about some of the other ones. You could still be on there and it would be great, but I think you should definitely be on LinkedIn. The same thing if you're like a much younger focused business. TikTok, you should definitely be on TikTok, but LinkedIn, maybe not as much, but maybe still some, but just not as much. So it's figuring out, where your audience is. And I would say dividing your time accordingly with that, but I think there's a problem with I don't want to say society in general, but I even feel it, where you feel like you just have to do everything and it's so stressful, and you don't have to. Just like when you're dating, you can be on every app, but we've all remember, if you've been on dating apps, that's how I met my husband. There's this guy, I swear I saw him on every single app, which means I was on a lot of them too. But I remember thinking, I was like, why is he on every app that I've, and he has like weird picture, so think about it from that angle too. Like, you don't want to be the person that's trying too hard,
Right.
so.
And also
Yeah.
too, if you are on the various platforms, I think it's also important to show up consistently across them. So you're not showing
Yeah.
one face to one and another face to another.
Totally, because that would not build trust. So it's about building that trust. But I also think that social media profiles for businesses are like dating profiles on dating apps. And I think it is kind of awesome because people should be able to look at your profile, like Instagram, for example. You can pull up your Instagram feed from your highlight buttons, from your bio, from your grid. They should be able to kind of get a general feeling of what you're about. And that can be really powerful because they could already be into you before you even meet with them.
Right.
Same thing if you match like on a dating app where you're like, I'm so excited to meet this person just from their profile. So I think there's a power to that can be harnessed.
So if people don't get anything else out of this episode, what would you like them to walk away with? It's
okay if you don't click with somebody. It's okay if you're not a match. Don't try to be a match with everybody. Look at it as being a good fit or being aligned or not aligned, and celebrate the connections you make where you do have that great chemistry and you do have that alignment. Focus on those. The ones where you don't, try to grow from it, but don't take it personally.
Love it. Okay, Emily, only 4 final questions for you then. Okay, first one is, what is the best piece of advice you were ever given?
So I don't know if I should say this, but I'm going to. It was fake it till you make it. That somebody told me that right when I started my marketing career, right out of college. And it was basically, I was a vice president of marketing with the company I worked for. And it was to build confidence. And she's like, you're not going to know a lot of the things that we're going to ask you to do. So you need to fake it till you make it. And it's true. Sometimes you just have to just go after it. Fake it's not really the right term, but you get what I mean. Sometimes you just have to go after it before you feel like you're ready. I think that's the gist of it.
Share with us one thing on your bucket list.
So I want to see as many national parks as possible. I would like to see all of them in the entire country, but I don't know if that's possible, but I want to try. So
when the toy companies finally get around to making an action figure of you, what 2 accessories will it come with?
Hopefully a magic wand, because I like to be able to create amazing experiences for people, and some sort of like way to look into the future. I don't know if it'd be like a crystal ball or something like that. I would love to have that because I like to plan ahead. So that'd be helpful.
And the last one, how do people find you if they want to work with you or follow you or any of those kinds of things?
So you can find me on pretty much any of the social platforms. If you look for Grace Communications, search for that. And then also our website, gracecommunicationsagency.com.
Great. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, it was fun. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Once again, I'm Marlena Semenza, photographer and visual strategist. Please comment, like, or share this episode, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss a thing. For more information on how I can help you create your iconic image, visit marlenasemenza.com.